You're listening to Girls with Grafts, a burn community podcast created by Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, a leading nonprofit dedicated to supporting the burn community. In this podcast, we'll talk with burn survivors, share resources to help with supporting and improving burn recovery, and discuss how to prevent burn injuries. Here are your hosts, burn survivors and Phoenix Society's marketing team, Amber Wilcox and Rachel Kudlak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Girls with Grafts. I am Rachel Kudlak, one of the hosts of the podcast, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Amber Wilcox.
Good afternoon. We are live today, which is very exciting. We get to catch up with a very exciting guest. And I know that we've been putting it out there that if you have questions or comments for this special guest today, to please leave them in our chat. Or comments below. So if you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment in the comment section. If you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, same thing. Leave your comments below. We'll be taking questions today. So with that, we'll kick off our episode. Rachel, let's first give a shout out to today's podcast sponsor, as we do. And we have a very special podcast sponsor today as well.
Yes. So today's podcast is powered by you, our listeners, our community. Phoenix Society is 67% funded by donor support. So this really means that we could not do this work. We could not do this podcast without our community of supporters. And actually earlier today, we just launched a Friends of Phoenix campaign. So we encourage you to help generate even more support for our mission by creating your own fundraising page today. So you can learn more. There's some really great benefits if you're a top fundraiser, including registration to next year's Phoenixville Burn Congress. So be sure to check that out at phoenixsociety.org/friends. And we'll have that linked below if you're listening later on, not live with us right now. So without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. If you saw in the title, you already know who he is. But today we have on J.R. Martinez. He is an Army veteran, burn survivor, actor, and motivational speaker, New York Times bestselling author, Dancing with the Stars Season 13 winner, and former Phoenixville Burn Congress EMC. JR has traveled the world speaking with troops at various bases, as well as serving as a keynote speaker for numerous major corporate events, nonprofits, university, and Fortune 500 companies. JR devotes himself to spreading his message of resilience and optimism. I'm going to bring him on here. JR, are you there?
JR. I think he left us.
No, I just did it on purpose. I just did it on purpose because, technology makes everybody panic when all of a sudden there's like a second. I always tell people, like, technology is like when it works smoothly, I am like most pleasant person to be around. If there's like 2 seconds where something's not clicking, I turn into the most horrible person you've ever been around. So I just felt like I'd have a little bit of fun and just kind of make you guys panic for a split second, but not too long.
That's right. We can find you.
Just enough.
Well, Jared, thanks for joining us. It's been a while since we've had a chance to chat with you. There's been a lot going on in your world. And I know I get to stay up to date on Instagram of all the things that are going on, but can you tell us a little bit about what's happening with JR these days?
Well, Instagram doesn't tell the entire story. One, because I don't post everything, or I don't do a good job sometimes. I mean, I got people on my side constantly in my ear, like, give us the content. But, honestly, like life has been, kind of interesting. I think, for people that have known me or have heard me speak before, I've in the past have found myself on the road pretty frequently and just go. And it's a great position to be in. And this year was unique in the sense of where I didn't find myself traveling for the first 5, 6 months of the year. And I was doing some local stuff here in Austin where I live, but there was nothing like that required me to be on a plane. And that was really a different space for me to be in over the last, I mean, God, I can't even think. But I kept reminding myself, and I've had this example over and over and over in the last 21 years, where there was a period of my life when things weren't busy, right? Because we're so conditioned to go, 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 and grind, 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 and look for the next thing and be the hustle. And I used to always have this ambition to want to tell people like, yeah, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. There's so much going on. And then as I got busy, I was like, I don't know if I necessarily care to be so busy. Like I want my life back a little bit. And at the beginning of this year, I kind of was like sweating it a little bit. I was like, man, why is there nothing going on? Right. This is primarily all I'm doing is speaking. And then I had to remind myself, you know what? Everything is about timing. And there's a reason. I may not be clear to me right now as to why things aren't clicking the way I would like for them to be, but it gives me an opportunity to regroup and really figure out what it is that I want to be, what I want to do. And so I've really been spending a lot of time with my team, just figuring out different, avenues and things that I want to explore. Do I want to get back into the podcasting space? I had a podcast for a couple of years. I want to get back into that. But speaking is obviously starting to pick back up, and I'm starting to, get myself on the road again, which is great because I thoroughly enjoy being in that space and having the opportunity to connect with new people and have conversation. But outside of that, I mean, I've just been, just kind of doing the dad thing and the home thing, and to my son, Leo, and who's a knucklehead and, but such a joy. And then to my daughter who plays travel select softball, and I'm the head coach. So that keeps us pretty busy. So it's been good. Life has been good. And I've just been learning to just appreciate this phase. And because I know that the grind, the busy period will come again. And in the interim, I'm just kind of being present.
It's important.
Yes, definitely. Well, we appreciate you finding the time. I know you say maybe you're not as busy, but I know you're super busy, and we appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, I think it's, I'm sure a lot of people have said this to you, and if they haven't, I'm sure they will, but it's great that you guys created this platform and to be able to create this space where people can have these safe conversations and, really share, be vulnerable and hopefully, be helpful to anybody, no matter what period they're in their recovery, right? There's things that I'm dealing with still that, I mean, I got a trigger the other day. I mean, literally related to my injury. So I don't know if any other burn survivors have this, but, and I haven't quite figured out what it's attributed to. But the only thing I could think of is because I had tissue expanders in my scalp, and I had several of them. It's weird. And there's times that I'm like, is it related to stress? Is it related to like sodium intake? Is it related? Like, I don't know. Those are the only two things that I can really think of when I try to think about what did I do the last 12 hours? But sometimes randomly, I will just start to get like almost like a sort of an itch, if you will, like a irritation. And I just like start to rub, and there's certain areas of my scalp that it'll start to happen. And I'm like, and before you know it, I have like a knot. I'll have like a knot. And then it'll start to just spread throughout my scalp. And I remember one time years ago, I went to the doctor and I was explaining to the doc what's going on. And she was like, well, explain to me like what it looks like, because at that point it had gone away. And I was like, the only thing I was like, like those dirt bikers when they go and they do those trails and there's like all these little mounds of dirt. I was like, that's what my head ends up looking like. It's like mounds of knots over the course of throughout my scalp. And it hasn't happened, and to the point where I can never understand when it would happen. And when I would travel, I would have to travel like the only thing I can think of is instead of me taking a Benadryl and knocking me out like for the next 24 hours or whatever, the only thing I would do is I would actually travel with a bandana. And if it happened, I would like go to bed and I would just tie this bandana, and like the compression, which was obviously not comfortable either, because I was trying to make it tight, and it wasn't because I was trying to like look cool or save the hair. It was like I was trying to eliminate these knots before I did interview tomorrow, before I went on stage tomorrow, before whatever it was. And it literally happened to me the other day, and I was just like triggered. I was like, it's just that moment of like, this is inconvenient. Inconvenient. And it's not because I had anything to do in front of people, but it was just like, just the idea that I have to deal with this. And so the reason I say all that and I share that is because I think that's what's great about this platform, is that you could be in the first 6 months, or you could be 21 years post, and there's something that all of a sudden triggers and it reminds you of what you still have to deal with. It may not be the same thing, but it's still something you have to deal with. And I think the key is allowing people to know it's okay. Like, I had my moment. I was a little pissed off about it. I was a little upset about it. And it's okay for all of us to have those moments, no matter how big or how small, whatever it is you're going through. You're allowed. You're okay. Give yourself grace, and then come out of that space, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's important.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you talk about it, the tissue expander, because I had tissue expanders and I have that same thing happen to me, but you can't really tell because mine happens in the back and I can just use my hair to cover it. But there's this one spot. And now that you brought up that dirt bike reference, I was like, oh yeah, that is what that's like over there.
Wait, so you get it as well?
Yeah, and I just always assumed it's because I wasn't washing my hair often enough. That I was skipping too many days and using too much dry shampoo, but maybe there's another cause for it.
I think it's nerve. I think it's, I mean, listen, there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of room in there, right? And you go in there, you start cutting all through the scalp and all this stuff. Like, there's bound to be some sort of nerve. I don't want to use the word damage, but just maybe just little things that irritate it.
I mean,
yeah.
And it's no different than somebody has a broken arm and a plate in their arm, and all of a sudden the weather shifts and they're like, it's going to rain today. And you're like, how did you know? Right. And so I just that's the only thing that I've been able to like attribute it to. And not a lot of people know about that, right? Like, I don't really talk about the expanders. I mean, it's in like there's photos of it, of course. It's in like a reel that I use when I speak, but not that I've like ashamed of it. No, I think it's incredible, the medicine and what they're capable of doing. But I just don't really talk about it. And that is something that I feel like I should be talking about more, because not only did I have my first expander was in my chest, right? Like, and like I had all this really thick scarring over through my neck, and it was just, I mean, it was nasty. We all know, and I don't have to go into detail. And the doc was like, hey, your chest is fine. So we'll just put a tissue expander, stretch some skin out, create some new one, pull it up, which is why you see that drastic, all of a sudden it's not burned anymore. Well, okay, there's two things that, yes, that's great. But the two things that are annoying about it is now this skin is tight. So like, it's always kind of still pulling down, which is, I've had multiple releases to try to alleviate that. So if I ever have to like turn or do something, I'm like, so I'm constantly like sitting here massaging this. But then what it also does, it makes my nipples uneven. So like now I got like a nipple lift on this side. So
but not the other.
Yeah, the other side, I'm like, I need to get a nipple lift. Like, I know people get facelifts. Can I get nip lift on the right side? I know that's super personal, but I'm just saying, I don't think I'll ever be like one of those shirtless models. Be like, look at me, because it's just gonna, people are gonna focus on the fact that why is his left higher than his right? Like, and you would think that these doctors, right? They're so advanced and so incredible and creative and research. You would think that they would think this stuff through, because a lot of them are cosmetic guys, right? Or girls, right? Whatever. But they're cosmetic doctors. Like the doc, I literally was telling my daughter the other day, because she's 12, and I forgot what prompted the conversation, but essentially something came up about like me having, one ear, and she kind of was like, well, like, how did that happen? Like, was it like in the doctor take it, or was it the injury? And I said, no, I had like some cartilage. I went in, and the doctor went in to try to create this new surgery where he was going to use a lot of my blood vessels and my body. And so that way, and I was like, but then when he realized in the OR, it wasn't going to work, he was like, all right, we're done. And he just left this nub. So I can't put an AirPod in, right? Like, such an inconvenience. I can only wear one AirPod, not two. And so like, if people are like, you know, and I wish I could wear one here because then people would know that I'm not talking to them. I'm actually on the phone, but you know, whatever. I'm always having to turn to like over exaggerate that I'm actually on the phone on this side. And I was like, yeah, like you would think this doc would like help me out, hook me up, give me a little bigger earlobe, just like the same doc that did the eyebrow. And I'm like, dude, just finish this out, man. There's enough hair on my body. You could have completed it. Right?
I attribute it to like when I start a project there of like, you know, I see this craft on like right on Pinterest, and I'm like, hey, I can do this, like, and then halfway through I'm like, this isn't at all what I thought it was.
That's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're
that's what they did to your ear, right?
No,
like,
that's exactly their thought process in the OR. They're like, oh, we're going on hour 10.
Like, listen, I tried everything I could do. This is like, I did it. Or what is that show? Like, nailed it. That is as close as they could get. Sorry.
So I should be grateful is what you're saying. I get it.
He obviously that day was like trying, but he's like, listen, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
So, you know, but it's like, it's, you know, and I think what's happening with the three of us right now, I like, this is what's really beautiful about the recovery process and how the journey, because now I can get to a point, we can all get to a point where we can just clown and laugh about this. And I think that's what's allowed me and allowed a lot of burn survivors that I've met over the years to really still connect with people all over the world that aren't even part of the burn community, because all of us have gone through some sort of trauma, right? Something on some level. And all of us have a recovery and a journey after that moment. And it's like, at what point are you able to really talk about it and maybe laugh about it and really connect with other people? And I think that's the human connection that ties me to people that I have the opportunity to speak to and other burn survivors, and have them, and allows them to have that connection with other people. And so I find it to be very healthy. Like this past weekend, my daughter played in the tournament, and, you know, she's pitching, and, you know, one of the parents, he's the guy that always has like these one-liners. He comes in and he just like, he's good at that stuff. And he's like, he yells out because, you know, she's pitching well and nobody's really able to touch her. And he says, somebody open the window. My daughter's name is Lauren, because Lauren's throwing fire or something like that. And then he said another line, someone open a window because, or somebody called the fire department because there's smoke or something like that. And everyone's laughing. And, you know, of course it's fun. And then I look over at him and I was like, why all like the fire references? Like the first rule of public speaking is know your audience. And I said it with a serious face. And then he's like, yeah. And then he's like, oh man. And then it clicked. Everybody was like, oh no. And I was like, I'm kidding. You guys know me by now. But it was like just fun to be like, you know what? We can laugh about this. We can clown about this. And I think that's what's special about the burn community, is that you allow people to understand that there is a point where you will get there. You will get there. It takes some time. It takes some work, but you will get to a point where you can sit here and laugh about your nipples being uneven.
Exactly.
I bet you guys did not think that this is what I would be sharing on this time, on our time together.
I didn't think we'd be here, but I will also say, I think the last episode, we also went down some rabbit holes. So I can't say that I'm super surprised here.
At least my shirt's on. It's not like I'm like, you guys want to see? And I'll start doing this. Like my shirt's still on.
We've had that too, right? Like we've had it all here on this show. So it's okay. Nothing will surprise us.
Nope. We are live though today. We got to be a little extra careful.
Yeah, we got to be our best. They're all watching us.
Yeah, all of a sudden we're like, your stream has ended, you know, because of JR's body parts that he's talking about. You know, but it's like those are like little things. Like, listen, I'm Hispanic, right? A lot of people may not know that, but I'm Hispanic. And listen, I was when I was, you know, I felt like I was 13 years old. I had a full-fledged mustache, right? I mean, it was so uneven. Like I tried to touch it up. Like I didn't know what I was doing. And it looked like, my buddy said the other day, it's like a caterpillar was just sitting on top of your lip, just because it was like so uneven. And I was like, how am I 13, 14 years old and have like a full-fledged like mustache? And so like after I'm burned, you know, like they shave your entire body, like because they got to clean it up and all this stuff. And so, they take all these grafts from my leg or, wherever, and they're putting it on different parts of my body. Well, I have like hairy shoulders because they use skin from my legs. And I'm like, so now I got these like long hairs that just kind of come out. If I wear a tank top, it's like a costume like this. And I'm like, oh, and then my back, it gets hairy. And then I'm like, it's so annoying. Like, why couldn't they just wax me and just kind of be done? Laser me up. Like,
do some laser hair removal before the laser surgery.
I get like on my lips. So right here, this scarring, I get like these little hairs, and I swear to you, I'm not good with like measurements or anything like that, but I swear the hairs are like this big. And I get some right here. So sometimes, like if I just go like that, I feel it and I'm like, and it just starts to bother me. So I'll stay in the mirror like this, like trying to get the perfect angle of this hair here. And there's like 2 here. And then when it finally comes out, I swear to you, it's the smallest thing. But it's so satisfying. I'm like, I can go about my day now. Like, and I will like, but I'm like, I should probably do something about that. So
and I swear they pop up. I get some of those on my eyebrow, like far down my face. And I swear they pop up out of nowhere and are suddenly like 5 inches long. I'm like, how did I not notice you for the past like
long?
Right. Like, then the one in my lip right here, it'll almost become like an ingrown, like hair. So like it has that curl. So when I finally get under it, I got all these little tweezers and tools that I travel with. And so when I finally break the skin and get under it, and then I pull that thing out, that one can be pretty long. Oh God, it's
satisfaction.
The things that make me happy. I just turned 41, or no, I am 41.
Good
the
for
things
you.
that make me happy at 41. I'm just saying.
I think that's the older you get, though. I like this year. My husband and I had a child, and I said at this stage in my life, the things now that make me happy versus what they did 10 years ago, I'm like, it's the silliest stuff, right? And I'm sure as a dad, you also understand that. But like, right, just 5 minutes of peace in the morning with a cup of coffee, like makes me happy now. It doesn't take much.
Oh, it doesn't take much for me. Like I don't need all this stuff that I was talking with a friend of mine, and we were just talking about how like a decade ago, the things we were getting into. And I'm like, oh God, just the idea of trying to keep up with the younger JR is just exhausting. Like that's just exhausting. And so, I mean, you just learn to, again, appreciate this space that you're in for what it is, because there's different things that come from it. So, listen, I'm rambling about a bunch of stuff. I don't know if this is the point or you guys have your questions, but if you let me loose, we might get banned. I'm just saying.
Listen, we're not trying to get knocked off of Facebook today, JR, but
preferably not. But we do have some love coming in for you from our comment section. So Jenna said, hey, JR, and Jeanette we have on YouTube. She has a few different ones here. It's all about community, and community is the new village, which I love the village.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And Jeanette also brings up a great point too about, the things that have advanced in medical communities and, just the way things are changing. But are you considering, maybe going back for more releases, or are you just kind of living your life today with, some of those?
Which, first of all, Jenna, my girl, like, I feel like we've lost contact over the last couple of years, but I'm so glad to see that you're still connected to the community. Just sending you big hugs, girl. And as far as Jeanette's point about like community, I think that's so important. I think my entire life prior to my injury, what I didn't realize this for the first 19 years of my life, but I realized this probably about a good, 5 or 6 years after I was injured, where what I was really looking for my entire life was community. I wanted to feel like I was a part of a space where I could, and not so much to be seen or heard, like I needed to be, the center of attention, if you will, but more just a space where I can connect and see a little bit of myself in other people and hear them, right, and see them. And I was able to get that, in very unorthodox way, right? I had to go through what I had to go through, but nonetheless, this is my family, right? Like you guys are, and we're all so deeply connected, and like a village, right? It's more personal. It's not like a community where it's like so broad and spread out. No, we're really connected, and like to the point where I can see somebody's name pop up and be like, I remember hugging you. Like I remember like spending time with you. And so, so I completely just agree with that sentiment. And, as far as like, there's things that are always on my mind, like, I mean, obviously the little silly things we talked about earlier, but I mean, even like releases, like on my, like in my, from the webbing, the spacing in my fingers. Obviously this is like the biggest one. And so I kind of had these moments where I'm like, man, I'd really love to go in and kind of get these releases done. But then I started thinking about like, okay, is it really affecting my quality of life, my ability to be, active and whatever it is that I'm doing? Well, it's not really hindering me right now. So I really try to spend a lot of time. I know this was something that was obviously really strongly encouraged after I was injured, which is, hey, just massage, man. Just sit there and just massage. So like I get in the shower and it's not going to get that detailed. I just wanted to, but I'll get in the shower, in a warm shower, and I just start massaging different parts of my body. Like, and I really try to spend more time doing a little bit of OT, like, from what I remember. But I think there will come a time. I mean, obviously as the body changes and as you get older, like there's going to be some things that are probably going to be a little bit more of an inconvenience, and I will explore that. But right now, I think I'm just kind of living life and just kind of going the route that I think most of us remember and, know it very well, which is that OT route.
I think there became a part where for me, I was like, you know what, at this point, I've done what I wanted to, and I'm struggling more to do the surgery than I am to just live my life. Right. Yeah. And it's a struggle, right? I hated doing it. I was triggered by going in to do it. So I thought like, kind of like what you said is, if this is not affecting my quality of life to the point where I'm happy, why am I going to go back? Now, maybe in 5 years, I'm going to learn, you know what, I'm really struggling with this part of my body. Okay. Maybe I want to like fix this.
Right.
But if it didn't bother me, why am I continuing to go back and hash out something that, like, for my mental health, I didn't enjoy doing? So I agree there.
The only thing I feel, and it's so simple, the thing that I really have thought about and have like explored in the last, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months is honestly like getting laser. Like, I mean, we talked about those little hairs, but it's so simple. But honestly, the biggest thing for me is like sometimes, because if I don't get to it, if I'm not able, sometimes I do got to break the skin, and then it gets all messy. And then you're like, oh, now you got like a dark, like scab
blood
right
mark.
Yeah.
And it takes forever to heal.
Heal, right? And so I think that would be the only thing that I would probably explore, in the near future. I mean, I've even thought about I got half a mustache. I'm like, do I just go ahead and laser that?
Get rid of it all.
Get it all. Like, I mean, why not?
Or tattoo one on. Who knows? There's all kinds of things now too, JR. So
get the caterpillar mustache.
Yeah, the caterpillar would bring it back now.
You can even do some colors.
I mean, get like a little swirl.
Get an actual caterpillar.
Get a swirl, or get a caterpillar resting on my lip.
Yeah.
I wonder how well that would go. So
an homage.
But I think you're right. I mean, it's and something you got to really remember is like to your point is like, what's the cost? I mean, I'm older. We're all older. We're getting older. The body's not going to recover from even the simplest surgery the same way, right? I mean, I've banked out a lot of, I've had, I know, I think in my bio, it says like 34, 33, 35. I don't know what the number is. And I'm like, I think that number's, I think we're past that number. So, but I did a bulk of that when I was younger. I was in my 20s, right? Like, I think the last probably big surgery I had was in my early 30s, where they ended up kind of doing a release here because of, just that scar tissue here. And then they worked on my lip a little bit. But yeah, I think the idea, listen, I I've done an incredible amount of work where I had to grieve. And I think before I could accept this, I had to grieve the loss of the old thing, the loss of the old identity that I had for 19 years of my life, meaning when I looked in the mirror, that's what I knew. That's all I knew. And then suddenly one day I woke up and I looked in the mirror and I was like, I have no idea who the hell that is. Like, who is that person? And you have to grieve that process. There's a grievance, and people have to understand that it's not just like, hey, but just accept it and things will get better. Yes, but you also have to like put to rest that idea that you had and that identity that you connected with. That has to be put to rest. Now, does that mean all of you is gone? No, it just means this component of your identity no longer is the same. So it's different components of it. And so I had to grieve. I had to learn how to grieve that. And a lot of that came from, without me really even understanding, but a lot of crying by myself. A lot of me, which is probably not maybe the best thing to do, I don't know, but playing a lot of Metallica and writing, and that's what I did. And I played a lot of Metallica, and it was just the phase that I was in, and I was crying, and I would write, and it would just be gibberish, but it would be my emotions, my feelings. And then it progressed to, okay, finding somebody that I felt I could trust. And he became somebody that I knew I could be vulnerable with, and he didn't judge me. And then like the more you start to kind of like see, okay, there's people out there that yes, will use anything against you because they're going through their own, mess, right? It's like they see, hurt people. But at the same time, I found more people that were willing to embrace and receive however vulnerable I was willing to be and show up for me. And the more that I started to get, because the thing is like, I use this a lot, is like, any brand, any company that were customers, consumer, like they're all gathering data, right? There's a reason when you go sign up or when you pay for something, or they're like, hey, can we send you like, offers and emails and all this. Everyone needs data. But the thing is, we as human beings are also accumulating data as well, right? Like every interaction I have is an opportunity for me to get some data. Like, okay, do you gravitate with this? Do you not gravitate with that? Oh, people are receptive to when I'm sharing these very, very personable, elements of my life. People are cool with that. Okay, then I'll slowly keep throwing stuff out there. And the data that I've accumulated over 21 years is that people, they just love that, because it's no different than like social media, right? People don't want to see anything really staged or scripted. They want to see you. They want to see raw. They want to see the realness. And so I think that's why I've been able to, succeed. And because you talk about going on dancing, dancing was my opportunity to show the world and just be fully open and transparent and vulnerable. And I cried on that show. I mean, I cheered and I laughed and I did a bunch of things on that show. And I think that's what, people connected with. And so for me, I just got to this point in my life where I don't need the surgeries to validate like I tell people, it's like, I am so secure and so confident with my appearance. Like, I really believe, like, I walk out this house, I'm a pretty good looking dude on the street. Like, you better be lucky I got a ring on my finger, right? Like, that's how I feel about myself, right? The only thing I'm insecure about is the way that I sneeze. I mean, it's like so obnoxious. My sneeze is so loud and obnoxious, and like it's like a bark, and it's like, and it comes sometimes in twos and threes, and you just never really know, and it just startles people. But outside of that, it's like, what am I having these procedures for? I don't need to sit here and try. And I realize, and I think this is something important to share. So a common thing that is talked about is how I had all these surgeries and I spent almost 2.5 years in the hospital, right? After I was injured. I want to be very clear about this. And I've started to like share this stuff because I realized that maybe, it's easy to read that or hear that and be like, oh my God. And I'm like, let's be real. I could have been out of that hospital in 3 months. Like, I mean, I was discharged 3 months after I was injured. I came back and I was treated at the facility, and I could have been gone literally probably about a year and a half in. I could have been like, all right, cool. Like, we've done a lot. But the problem was I had not grieved and accepted that. And I kept hearing this lingo from these doctors stating, and maybe they didn't say this exactly verbatim, but of course, when you want to hear what you want to hear, it's all going to be twisted. But I kept hearing something along the lines of like, we could help get you back to what you used to look like. Or at least that's the way it clicked in my head, because that's what I wanted, right? I wanted the old JR because I didn't know who this person was. And so trust me, the military was quick to be like, hey, we're good, right? Like, we can start your paperwork, we can get you out. And I was like, no, I'm going to stick around. I think I want to have this surgery and that surgery, and fine. It was cool. But I realized later, I spend a lot of my time trying to recapture who I used to be. And I was working backwards. So a lot of those surgeries are become like, yeah, let's have another expander. I want to get this curly hair back one day. Or yeah, let's do this. Let's do that. Right. Just so like, I could have, like, especially now, it's incredible. Like, I mean, they'll have somebody that had the same severity of injury as me, and they get them out of that facility within 6 months. And you're like, okay, you come back every now and then on a, as needed basis. But outside of that, you're out of here. I stuck around because I was trying to still recapture the old me. And listen, it's everybody's journey and there's no right or wrong, but I identify that about myself and know it's something that, that's why at this point, I'm like, I'm not trying to work backwards. I'm not trying to appease anybody. At this point, I'm trying to work with, what works for my life.
I think grief's a funny thing. Not funny in that way, but I've learned a lot about my grief, I think, over this transition of like, okay, who I was, what I've done. And even I think today, like, there are moments of grief that we experience, whether it's with our injury or, the loss of someone. And I think even for myself recently, discovering what grief looks like, right? For me, sometimes grief is like, I need to sit in a dark room and cry, right? And that's okay. And knowing that that's okay. But I need my moments of that, right? I can't just turn on my grief and understand that I'm feeling sad all the time. Like, I need space to find a spot where I can grieve and feel comfortable enough to be able to do that. And that can be really difficult, right? To know like what it's like to be able to grieve. And so I think it's really important that you talk about grief specifically as it relates to your burn injury, because sometimes we can want to just be strong for whether it's a caregiver or a loved one, or even just for ourselves, but also recognizing like it's okay to be sad and okay to just feel emotions. That doesn't need to happen all the time, but it should happen in those moments when we need to, because it's healthy for us, right? To like cry it out and feel like we can move on from it.
And I think something, that something I had to learn, and this was not even really related to my injury. I mean, the injury obviously compounded the issue, but what I identified when I finally like got into therapy and started unpacking things, I mean, this is over a decade ago. I realized that there was a lot of things prior to my injury that I experienced that I never really just put any thought into. And then of course the injury was sort of like the last, thing and so what I was carrying for a long time was a lot of the stuff prior to my injury, not even stuff really related to my injury. And obviously the injury didn't help, and, the appearance didn't help and all that stuff. The scarring didn't help. But one of the things that I realized that I was doing is I was, again, one of those hurt people just kind of going out and looking. Like if I were to meet like either one of you, I would have expected Amber or Rachel to be the one person that's going to fix it all for me. That's going to give me the community. That's going to give me unconditional love. That's going to be able to and what I realized I was doing is I was going to people that, one, were not emotionally in the space or mentally in the space to be what I needed them to be for me. Right. And two, and if somebody was, then because it felt so good, because it does feel good when you find that person or people, I kept going back to the same source, the same well, looking for that water. And then before you know it, that person's drained. And now
trauma
that
dumped.
I trauma
Yeah.
and I just literally just took all their energy. And it's like, that person's like, I don't know what else I can give you. So that person's like, I need space. I need to back away. And now I'm interpreting that as like, oh, you've abandoned me. Now someone else. And it's an easy out to say, it's because of the way I look. It's because of the way I look. It has to be because of the way I look. There's no other reason. And over time, I've identified, and now I can honestly say, I know who I can go to depending on where I'm at in this particular moment in my life. If I want to cut up with somebody and I'm like, hey, I feel good right now, I know I can call this person, and that's my person that I can jam with in that space. If I feel like a little heavy or a little confused about something or whatever, I know I go to this person. So I kind of have my things spread out now and kind of have it figured out on some level. And I think that's important for people to understand, is that one, in some cases, you will have to learn how to sit with yourself. I mean, that is first and foremost. You can sit here and look outward all day long, and you can have 15 people. You'll never truly be able to appreciate those 15 people for what they bring and what they
you gotta sit with yourself
until you learn how to sit with yourself.
And be comfortable with that. I think that's really important.
That's it.
You need to be comfortable sitting with yourself alone, right? Like, it's okay. I can sit alone in a room and be okay with who I am. And if you can't do that, then there's no way that you can expect someone else to accept you. And I think
a lot of people want me to talk about the day that I was injured and what happened and all that stuff. And I say, okay, I get that. I understand that. I get it. But the only real thing I spend time talking about is the 5 minutes that I was trapped inside of this Humvee. And obviously I was going through what I was going through. All of us understand that. But the only thing I think that really matters is over the course of those 5 minutes, in the midst of me literally gasping for air and my eyes getting really heavy, they would close. And this happened several times over those 5 minutes. And in the midst of my eyes being closed, I no longer heard all the noise outside of the Humvee. I no longer felt the pain. I no longer I was no longer consumed by all these other things. The only thing that I was consumed with was literally, I could hear my own voice. I could literally hear myself saying to myself, like, this is what's going to happen. Like, I'm losing my life, like, in this way. And the other thing was I could actually feel myself breathing. And so I would then tell myself, like, no, you can't keep your eyes closed, because the way I interpreted it was, if I keep my eyes closed, I'm done. I'm giving up. And so I would open my eyes and I would continue, and I would be, connected with the elements. And then all of a sudden I would get weaker and then close my eyes again. And I'd go back to that. The reason I think that's important to share, because one of the things I've done it, and I've, sporadically, but I've kind of consistently getting back into it this year. Like, it's kind of been my year to try to get back to taking care of myself a little bit more and be more disciplined in that and consistent. And one of the things that I'm doing is going to yoga. And I'm a maniac, so I do the heated yoga. And so
love the heated yoga.
And so
I'm a hot yoga junkie myself.
Oh, I love it. I'm like, can we turn?
It's funny. I've not heard another burn survivor that likes it. So Rachel knows I'm like a hot yoga nut, and I've not heard of another burn survivor. I have to prepare appropriately, because I will tell you, as a burn survivor, you have to prepare differently, I feel. But
in what way?
Interesting. I think knowing that I need more water now than I did before. So you probably didn't do a lot of hot yoga before your injury, I would imagine. Yeah. So, before my injury, I could go in on 2 cups of coffee, not drink anything, and be like, this is good, right? Maybe have some alcohol the night before. Now I know. And trust me,
back then you were using the yoga as a detox to get all.
That's right. And I will tell you, as a breastfeeding mother now that has a burn injury, if I don't have, 6 Gatorades and 8 cups of water before I go into that room, I might die.
Yeah.
And so I will say, it's very different now, but I love myself some good.
No, I mean, and I 100%, connect with that, because one of the things that I do now is I'll do element. that element packages. Like they have,
Mm.
it's essentially like salt. It's like gives you magnesium, and it's healthy for you. It's good. So I'll drink one of those either before or after, so that way I'm not dehydrated. So completely connect with that. But and in this stage that I'm like going to yoga more frequently and practicing, and obviously the biggest thing is you're sitting there at the beginning and it's like, okay, close your eyes and set an intention. Set an intention for these next 60 minutes or however long this period is that you're going to be practicing, whatever you're practicing. Set an intention. And that's something that I think I needed to hear, because there's a lot of times I go into things with no clear intention. I'm just going in it just to be open. But no, you have to have some intention. You have to leave some wiggle room in there as well for life to happen, and beautiful things to experience. But it's also like breathe, and all that did was it reminded me, it wasn't a trigger, but it reminded me of the time when I was fighting for my life and I just had to breathe. And I think in the mix of life and how chaotic it can be with responsibilities of family, of kids, a job, or whatever, there's so much noise and chaos that I think it's important for all of us to be able to go to that place where I can just close my eyes and just connect with my own breath and connect with my own voice. And that just goes back to what you and I were talking about, as far as you got to be comfortable with doing that. And the more that you practice it, and it doesn't have to be like a traditional meditation. Hell, you can go for a walk if you want to. Go for a walk, and just the point is, like, don't look for external things to constantly distract you. Don't like, I go on walks now and I'm like, there used to be a point where I'd be like, well, if I'm going to go on a walk, I got to like knock a
I gotta
call
have someone in my ear. I gotta do
have
something.
a podcast on. I gotta, there's something productive. I gotta listen to my Audible. Like, no, now I'm like, I'm just gonna go on a walk because I just need to be in the world.
I need to let my mind do its thing. And I think it's really important in yoga. I became a yoga teacher after my injury, specifically because I knew what yoga could do for me, and I knew what I could do, that I wanted to be able to do that for other people. But I will tell you, like, sitting with your mind and being like allowing yourself, there's grief in that, right? Like there's grief in, okay, I need to let my mind race for the next hour and let it think through everything. Because if you don't have a chance to sit with your thoughts for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes, for an hour, I learned a lot about myself in that hour of grief. And I will not forget, in the last 6 months, I've not had a chance, right, to do a lot of that yoga. And my husband stuck me in a locked room. It sounds crazy, but stuck me in a locked room on Mother's Day. And
wink if this is like a
all right, but stuck me in a locked room on Mother's Day and said, you need to spend time. I can see it on your face that you need that hour of mindless activity for yourself. And he did. And I came out of that room, and JR will not forget, I sobbed. I just sat there and sobbed for an hour. And it was because I just needed a chance to be myself and to remember who I was. And I think like yoga helps me with that. And there is that level of, there's faith in yoga. I think there's a lot of grief in yoga, and there's a lot of different things that make you feel more like yourself. And but correct, if you cannot sit with your own thoughts, there's no way you can help support someone else if you can't do that.
And not only support someone else, but you're also not able to then receive.
Be yourself.
Be yourself, but also be able to, when you're around, like one of the things that I've learned is that we're so conditioned to believe that anytime someone approaches you, and anytime someone reaches out to you, like, anytime you start some sort of dialogue, somebody wants or needs something from you. And what I've learned, and I get these reminders, but what I've learned is that's not always the case. And in many instances, I don't even realize the reason that I'm having this interaction is because this individual is here to give me something that I need. And I've had to learn how to open myself up to that idea that I can receive a blessing and some sort of really incredible wisdom from an unexpected source. And it doesn't have to be from somebody that is a burn survivor, someone that's a veteran, someone that has been exactly through what I've been through. It could be literally, and I tell this story pretty frequently because it was like super powerful, but this lady that works at the airport here in Austin, and 5 years ago, I just did a speaking engagement for this large company, and I did 2 dates for them, and It was Delta Airlines, and I'm a Delta snob, so it was kind of like a bucket list thing. It was like so awesome for me. I
Mhm.
remember flying back to Austin, and I was just all of a sudden, I don't know what it was, something triggered me, and I was in a bad mood. And I park at the airport, so I get in my car. I don't even text my wife and let her know I landed. I'm just driving home. I just need to be. I don't want to talk to
Mm.
anybody.
Grumpy. Yep.
Grumpy. And I pull up to the, the booth agent, cashier or whatever at the parking garage. I don't even look at the lady or the person. I just hand my ticket out and I'm looking straight. Like that tells you that, one, if you know me and spend some time with me, that's not who I am. Like I'm an eye contact guy. Like, hey, how you doing today? What's going on? Right? Like that's me. And then I can feel somebody grab it, but they don't take it. So then, of course, that I look and it's an older lady, and she asked me a series of questions. And she said, one, like, she's like, was I burned? And I said, yes. She's like, was it most of your body? And I said, yeah. She's like, were you in the military? And I was like, yeah. She's like, can I pray for you? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then she did silently. And then she all of a sudden started writing. And I was like, okay, I guess now I'm going to pay and do the whole process. Well, then she hands me a ticket and she says, are you familiar with Buddhism? And I said, no, not really. And she says, well, in Buddhism, there is a Buddhist we call Amitabha. And Amitabha represents infinite light, infinite wisdom. And she's going on this really beautiful explanation about this Amitabha. And she says, when I see you, I see Amitabha. And she goes and expands on that. And then all of a sudden, okay, cool. Now it's time for me to pay. And it's sort of kind of like that metaphor for life, right? There's that arm in any parking garage that you can't proceed until you've paid your dues. And so all of a sudden I paid my dues and that arm lifts up and I pull out of the parking garage and I call my wife and I'm like, yo, babe, Amitabha. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I'll tell you when I get home. I'm on my way home. And all of a sudden my energy completely shifted. And it came from, but think about that. And I think this is why I like to share that experience so often, is because over the course of that interaction, I had several opportunities to shut the door. When she asked me, was I burned? I could have said, it's none of your business. When she asked me if it was most of my body, I could have said, none of your business. When she asked me if I was in the military, none of your business. When she asked me if she could pray for me, no, absolutely not. Are you familiar with Buddhism? No, and I don't care. Like I could have shut it down, but I have done so much work that I know that there's something in that, and I have to find a way to open myself up, not just my mind, my heart, to this exchange, knowing that this lady, who, mind you, I have not seen at the airport since, and I travel often. There's a reason for that. That lady, I still have that damn ticket that I every now and then look at, and I don't follow Buddhism. I don't like but Amitabha's my thing, to the point where I might get it tatted on my body one day, just because it's such a beautiful reminder, and it came from this unexpected source, and it's a blessing this lady has kind of like shed on me. And so, I had recovered physically, but mentally and emotionally for years I hadn't. And I was hurt, and I was triggered by a lot of things. And when I tell people that I'm blessed and lucky to be where I am today, it's not simply because I survived what happened to me overseas. I'm blessed and I'm lucky to be where I am and to have created the life that I've created, because I put myself in some really tough positions. Post my injury. I was not in a healthy place, and thankfully, I was surrounded by the right people at the right time that allowed me to identify that there's some things that I got to work on. And at this point, I was kind of willing, like, to say, well, hell, I got nothing else to lose. I might as well try it and listen and pay attention. And here I am, right? And I had this moment about 2 weeks ago. We're sitting down for dinner, and my daughter says, because here in Austin, in Texas, it's already freaking hot. And my daughter says, like, oh, I'd love to get in the pool. And my wife says, well, after dinner, yeah, I think you can get in the pool. And then my wife looks at me and she's like, and then my son is like, pool? I want to go to the pool. He is my ride or die. He is like ride or die FOMO dude. He's going to be 3 in August. So like, if you say he's where are you going, Dad? Where are you going? I was like, oh, I'm just going to go do this. I want to come. That's what he does. I want to come. I want to come too. Like that's how he does it. It's so cute. And that's like that little 2.5-year-old voice. And so he hears pool and he's like, I want to come. I want to go swimming. And then my wife looks at me. She's like, can you? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I could do it. I was going to do some work. I was like, you know what? I'll jump in the pool. So we all 4 of us jumped in the pool. And it was one of those moments in my life where I just like paused and was like just really present on everything that was happening around me. And just kind of, I was like, I wish I could timestamp this moment. And I felt like I did in my mind. Like I just timestamped this and I was like, this is pretty effing special. Like this is pretty incredible. That the things that I told myself when I was in a hospital that I was never going to have. I told myself I would never be able to, one, have a job, let alone have conversation with normal people, let alone meet somebody and have a family. Like I would never have those things. And I just marinated on that in that space for so long and just allowed the story to just increase. And yet here I am 21 years post and I got that and so much more. So it's one of those just beautiful reminders for me. And I think everybody that is watching now, or if they watch this later, to just, hey, you just got to keep showing up and just keep doing the work and just keep believing. Trust me, you got to have some faith. Like it doesn't make sense always in this moment. It will over time. And you can really do some incredible things with this. But, you know, there's a process. And to every person, it's different. And that's okay. Your process is your process. But the key is the willingness to go through the process, knowing that there's something beautiful at the end of it. Whatever that end is. And it could be just the end of this chapter. It doesn't mean the end of your life, the end of this phase, the end of this moment, the end of this chapter, whatever term you want to use. But life is cool, man. I mean, life is great. I mean, listen, I'm sure there's probably people that have questions and stuff, and I'm down to answer those. But I don't know. I appreciate these conversations because I think these are conversations that I don't often maybe have because there's just a lot of come in and tell us this. And it's just like, man, I just want to talk. Like, I just want to sort of fully transparent and real. And I think that's kind of the evolution of my speaking is like now I'm in a space where I'm not afraid to roll up and be like, yesterday was crappy. You know, like
I had a shit day and it's okay to say that, right?
I'm sorry that you guys you're paying me a lot of money for me to come in and just trauma dump on you, but I'm going to be real. But you know what? This is how I'm going to get myself out of that. And this is what I want to impart on you is like, this is how we get ourselves through that. So it's, you know, it's really, you know, I said this to someone the other day and I said, one of the things that I had to learn and I had to be comfortable with is that there was all this pressure that I put on society to just know and understand who I am and what I'm dealing with. And that is unfair to put on people.
Yep.
And
I think as a survivor, sometimes we expect that, and I've said that often of like, oh, I went to the store and this person, right? Like was up. And you can't expect that person, one, knows what you're dealing with, right? Yep. And two, knows what it's like to be a survivor because it's very difficult to expect that on someone. And until I was one myself, I had very different expectations of what it was like to be in those shoes. And my husband and I talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
And it's not. And so if you want people to understand, then you have to be willing to be the educator. And you have to, it's the same applies to those in the military. Like, you know, we expect civilians to no, they don't. Everyone's living their lives and it's not wrong for them to go and live their lives. But if we want them to understand, then we have to be willing. We have to find the time and the right space and the right words, and we have to the right tone and the delivery, all that stuff. But we become the educators. And then over time, then people start to gradually understand. And I think I've just kind of embraced sort of that role as like, you know, I'm one of those educators out there in the world and I'm cool with that. And I'm allowing people to understand that when you see me or anybody like me or anybody that has a difference, that, you know what, let's get to the root of who that person is. Because if you're able to get through all that other stuff, you'll find a really dope person that you actually want to be around a lot.
I love that.
Well, I know
I do.
we're definitely over time, and I could spend the rest of the day chatting with you, JR. And I know you.
Let's just do that.
Let's just cancel
We're just
everything.
live
Right?
stream the
Cancel
rest of the
everything.
day.
Yeah, like I mean, let's just the three of us. We don't need an audience. Like we don't need. I mean,
No,
at this
I don't
point,
need an audience. This has been healing for me just
I
as
just
much
took
as I think.
Mhm.
Like, this is therapy for me. Like I'm good now. Like
Well, with that though, we do have to close out this podcast because we do have to go about our day. So, JR, I just want to give it a second, if it's okay with you, for us to talk about our upcoming webinar series for those that want to. So Rachel, do you want to just let us know what's going on in the world of Phoenix Society before we go about our way today?
Of course. So today is our season 4 finale of Girls with Grafts. So we'll have a little bit of a summer break before we're back this fall.
4, can you believe it?
Wow, 4 seasons.
It's wild.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so season 5 will come out later this fall, but in the meantime, we'll be hosting a few webinars this summer to keep our community engaged. So the first one's actually happening next Wednesday, June 26th at 12 p.m. That'll be with NFPA's Lorraine Carley, and we'll be talking all things fire safety this summer, from fireworks, boating, grilling. Yeah, lots to cover. So be sure to join us then. And then the second one I'm really excited about, another returning guest that we've had on this podcast is Tanya Mezenbach, aka Burn Beauty 2018. We're going to be going live with her on July 17th at 6 p.m. And trust me, you don't want to miss that. We're going to be talking summer skincare. So I love all things skincare, whatever products I need to be using. Tanya's going to be filling us in. She has
She's
some
got
really
the dirt bike scalp, like JR's
you might have to come back for that.
I might be on that one. I might have to step into that one.
I don't get scalp, but I was gonna say I get it on my leg. I get these strange bumps that just come out of nowhere because I have a graft on my leg. And they come out of nowhere at random times. So you're not alone on this, JR.
Oh my God.
It's dirt bike leg. I get.
Both of you are like, yo. And I'm like, see, that's how this works, guys.
Yeah,
why we
exactly.
Yep. You gotta just give us a holler, JR.
I better get a DM from somebody though saying that the nips are a little off too. Like don't leave me hanging on that one. Somebody come on.
Send him an IG DM.
No pics though. No unsolicited pics.
No.
No.
But please, we're gonna start this trend. Yeah. Please, if you're a survivor and you have some uneven nips, JR wants to know.
We're looking for you.
We're looking for you.
And JR, I hope you come and circle back with the two of us to let us know about this situation.
I just think of like Amy acting right now, just like
poor Amy,
shaking her head like, oh my God. I remember meeting JR in 2008 and
these are what the girls are talking about on their podcast. Sorry, Amy.
She's laughing somewhere. I have all of my work like Zoom messages shut down. Someone could be messaging me like, stop talking about that. No idea.
I cannot believe you are bringing up.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Well,
awesome.
With that, JR, we want to thank you for joining us on this, what's been a really beautiful season. We've talked about all sorts of new things and topics, but this has, as always, been one of my favorite episodes. So
it's so much fun.
Well, listen, I applaud you guys. I feels like yesterday, and I'm sure it feels that way for you guys, where you like, we just started the show, and now here, congrats. As Jeanette said, I saw that pop up, and where she said congratulations on 4 seasons, and I mean that's incredible. And just keep up the great work, ladies, and continue to share this platform with everybody, because everybody has something to share. They don't realize it yet, but they do. And so to everyone that watched this, I mean, you're part of this community. We welcome you. We love you. And we're always here to receive you with open arms, no matter what it is that you're navigating. And just know that, as long as you're navigating, you'll eventually find what it is that you're looking for and what you need. But Rachel, Amber, it's always a pleasure. It's always great to see your faces and great to just kind of have this, really rad conversation. So I just appreciate both of you, and have an incredible summer. And I know we will be talking soon.
Yes.
You as well, JR. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.